Hello everyone, and welcome to my Lego room. I'm TJ the Brickwright, and today is going to be a fun treat because not only last week did I show off a new creation, but this week I'm doing one as well. I do not have instructions for this particular MOC. I don't think it's going to be as exciting as some of the other ones, but this is one that was exciting for me, and I am looking forward to explaining what it is because there's a very good chance that after this video, this entire MOC will be taken apart and stripped for parts to build a new version of the same MOC using very similar pieces and techniques, and hopefully building one that's a little more entertaining and a little more interesting for people. However, if I can get 10 people saying they want the instructions for this, I'll be willing to take the time as I disassemble it and build the instructions, and we'll go from there. But until I get those 10 requests, I'm not going to worry about it. So you've got 1 week to get in those requests. I know. Hopefully we get a lot of people who are interested in the instructions. Again, only if you're truly interested in getting the instructions. Most likely the instructions would be free because this isn't my greatest work structurally. And again, I am going to be improving it. So yeah. So if people want to get it, we'll go ahead and do that. So before we get too far, this is what this is what I'm going to be showing you today. This is what I call the JT16 hauler / salvage barge. So let's maybe get some closer views for you and show you how this whole thing got put together and the inspiration behind it. So the JT16 hauler was an idea that I wanted to pull my dad's final crane truck that he built in this life. Not the Lego crane truck that some of you may remember, but his actual crane truck that he built, and hopefully I'll have a picture here for you that you can see. But I wanted to build that ship, or that truck, as a ship in Star Wars. And this is what I came up with. So as you can see, it's not exactly perfect. It's not a 1-to-1 ratio on what his truck was and what this vehicle is, but I needed a purpose for it. And so that purpose was adapted into more of a tow vehicle rather than what we used ours for, which was new construction. So a couple little features on this thing. First, the crane actually rotates a full 360 degrees, and it's got this little knob that's actually on both sides, and you can turn the ship a full 360 degrees, which is pretty fun. The crane itself actually can rise up just a little bit more, so you get just a little bit more height on the salvage portion of things. So if you need to pick up something and put it on here that's a little bit taller, you can lift that up just that little extra bit to give it that distance. I kind of wanted to put more of a height on there, but I think what I ended up with was working really well, and it turned out just fine. It's just an extra little feature there. The other thing that's kind of fun about this is it has 2 hooks, and those 2 hooks are actually controlled by 2 crane winches that are back here that are just operated with these gears, and they operate independently. So if you just need one at a time, you can just lower one at a time or raise one at a time. But if you need 2 for picking up a larger salvage or a larger whatever it is you're trying to pick up, you can use the 2 so that you get a more balanced weight if you can't get a centered pivot point or a center hook point on whatever it is you're grabbing. Another fun feature about this is that right here we actually have a sliding mechanism, so you can actually control how close or how far away you are grabbing something. It holds itself pretty well with weight on it. The only disadvantage that I say that it has in its current configuration is that the tiles up here tend to get pretty scratched. It contacts pretty heavily, so these tiles up here are basically ruined for any kind of a finish. You'll only ever want to use them for something that slides going forward for forever. But that's okay. A lot of stuff actually does that by itself, so not too torn up about it, but the only issue for this is you're going to see it a little bit more. That's okay. So that's the crane itself. That's how the crane works. I actually have a lot of fun moving it around. I've picked up a few things with it. It's not the greatest functionality for play, but again, I was going for a particular look and a feel, and I think it worked out pretty good. Let's go ahead and go to the next highest section, which is our cockpit here. So on the very front, you can actually see I'm using windscreens that are upside down. And they are made upside down by a series of clips and I always call them inkwell pieces, but I know that's not what they're actually called. I think they're modified tiles. But if we look on the bottom here, you can kind of see one of those right there. So I've got regular plating underneath, and then I've got a curved inverted slope there with a little clip. Sorry, let's see if I can get that a little better. And then the little inkwell piece that's holding the top of the windscreen right there. These little bars are actually just floating, but I thought they still looked pretty good and gave it kind of a more industrial feel in the front. I kind of wanted to make it feel like the ATTE front. It didn't quite turn out that way, but I really like the way that it worked. Got a couple of lights on either side here. You can see that one a little bit better. And then a couple of floodlights at the top as well for some good visuals. That was something very important when you're driving at night. Another little detail that I added just recently was some red lights on this side and green lights on this side. And the reason for that is in boating or in aviation, in aircrafts, you have red and green lights. And for those of you who don't know, if you see a vehicle coming or facing you in some way, the way that you know that it's danger is if red is on the right, run away. It's the triple R, red on the right, run. Because that means whatever it is coming straight for you. If you see lights and green is on the right, then you're good to go. So green is good, red is run. You definitely don't want to see red lights on the right-hand side getting closer at night. And that was something that I ran into while I was boating once. Somebody was coming straight for me, and I don't know if they didn't see me or what, but we almost hit. So that's something to be aware of if you ever are boating or if you're flying airplanes. But you should already probably know that if you're flying planes. All right, inside there's a little bit of stuff. There's not a ton. I believe I have the console and a little bit of stuff behind it. So let's see if we can get a good view. So we just have a pretty simple console down inside there. One thing that is kind of fun is there is a clip and a little hook that moves the console up a little bit. I really wish I could get a better view for you guys. That crane is just right in the way. Other than that, the cabin is mostly empty. It's mostly used as a walkway to get from the front to the back. And yes, it is hollow underneath the crane, so you can actually access the back from the cockpit or from the cabin, the forward cabin. And that's what this doorway is actually here for. It adds a little bit of a structural support for the crane and opens up the doorway so that you can get past there. I even have a few little plates inside that are steps, just as a little aside. So on the back of the cabin here, you'll see we have a little droid, and he's actually accessing a little control. I thought a fun idea would be to have a droid be the one that's operating the crane, because they can operate it a little bit more precisely, but then you'd need to be shouting orders to him or using a comm or something like that. This particular guy right here, though, he actually is holding a little control that uses Watto's data pad from that old set. Man, it's just not focusing. I apologize, guys. There we go. So he's using Watto's old data pad screen from the really old set. But my idea for this one is that that's actually a secondary crane control, and the crane may have a camera on it so that you can aim it a little bit and pick up whatever you're trying to hit. So I thought this could be a secondary remote control in case your droid isn't behaving properly. All right, so A couple other things. Right next to the droid there, you can see we've got a little hook and some chains. Those chains are used for just grabbing whatever you need as little buffer zones in case you need to strap whatever it is you're pulling up. This little hook right here is actually for your hooks. They can actually go directly on the crane. And I thought having those as a little extra so that you can just attach that onto whatever piece you're trying to lift up, and there you go. You can lift it up without any problems. So it's a makeshift connection point for your hooks. You can also just use the chains and wrap them around the hook as well. It may not be as secure, but for Lego it totally works. So I didn't feel a need to go too far on it. I probably put more thought into this than I should have, to be honest, because it is just Lego. But again, I was trying to build something that was similar to what my dad had, and it was completely functional. There are actually 3 engines on the ship. So there's the 2 at the back that are easy to see, and then there's 1 at the front. And then all the way down, if I pull this underneath, are 2 runners. And those runners, I imagine, would be full of repulsor lifts to keep this thing off the ground no matter what. So then you have the front engine that's a little bit offset. So the intake, if you look, is a little offset of center for the circular sections. The little exhausts and stuff down here are lower than the intake on there. But I didn't care. I thought it was fun. Then the rear engines were kind of inspired by one of the pod racers, where they have a big front, a skinny middle, and a big back end for the thrusters. And the back thrusters are actually something I was very proud of. Just using those 1x1 round plates with the bar on it and just putting them inside at a little bit of an angle, and it gives it a little bit of a swirl pattern, which is kind of fun. I originally had some fins on it, but the fins were just way too busy. It really took away from the clean simplicity that I was going for, the utilitarianness of the build itself. Since we're moving to the back, we may as well show you we've got a couple other large chains down here. We've got a backup battery, so that if the vehicle you're trying to tow is too big for this ship, you can actually attach this onto it. Assuming the ship is dead, you can just hook this battery onto it and activate the repulsor lifts. Obviously they'd be dead too. And then you can tow it behind you using the longer chains if you so desire, or a tractor beam, which this particular model does not have a tractor beam. You'd have to use cables to tow. But other models replace the gunner turret here with a tractor beam. Now this gunner turret was kind of fun to build because I wanted it as small as possible, and so I tried to build these little teeny cannons, and I knew I wanted it to be a double cannon. I don't know, just design wise I just wanted it that way, but I wanted it small enough that it would fit on the back of this thing and be able to turn back and forth pretty easy and not get too hung up on the stuff back there. The battery is actually in the way of the cannon a little bit. So if you're ever chasing this thing and trying to steal its salvage or whatever it's carrying, then you'll want to go to this side of the vehicle, because they won't be able to turn quite as far because that battery's in the way, assuming the battery's actually on it and not being used for a tow. There's just a little bit of machinery stuff on the inside. Not a whole lot of stuff to talk about there, but the engines are actually really well connected. I think you can actually hold this thing from those engines, but I'm not going to do it right here because you wouldn't be able to see it anyway. So overall, this is a crew of 3 characters on it, including a droid as well. So droid is an extra, but you should be able to do it with 3. You'll have a spotter for the crane, you'll have a crane operator, and a pilot at the very front. So 3 people to operate this thing. We had 3 people for a long time when my dad was working with that crane truck. So I wanted to make sure that my dad and I and one of my brothers, whoever was working with us at the time, were all represented there. There were only 3 seats in the the truck itself. So you can only ever have 3 people. But I wanted to represent that just a little bit. Yeah, and that's my guy. That's my ship. The JT16 salvage and tow hauler. So I hope you've enjoyed looking at this thing. I hope you enjoyed the little more laid back format of me not using a script this time. Some people gave me feedback and said, "You're not very good at scripts. You should not do that ever again." That's not exactly what they said, but that's what I took it as, is, hey, maybe it's better if I just wing it and just let it come naturally. And that might be just as good as writing out the scripts. Oh, I forgot the little lights on the little slider thing too. I have lights on that too, because lights are important. So my dad's crane truck did not have the remote, I should mention, but the new crane truck that we got to replace it does have a remote. And a lot of the fancy extras that I included were from the new truck that we got for my job. But I figured, in the spirit of the thing, of the ship, putting on new technology that's available to us now that wasn't available when he built the truck would definitely be in the spirit of having it be new, but also familiar. So, and that's classic Star Wars design. You know, actually just talking about it here, I've grown to, I've appreciated this a little bit more. So maybe it won't come apart nearly as quickly as I thought it was going to. Oh, I wanted to show you guys too. I actually brought a little TIE Fighter pod with me that I could put on there and show you that it can carry a little bit. A whole ship would probably have to be towed, but if you're scavenging for parts or like speeder bikes or land speeders, most likely a lot of those things would fit on the bed here, which is fun. So anyway, that's the JT16. I hope you guys like it. I hope at least 10 of you are interested enough to tell me that you would be interested in seeing the instructions, whether that's to build it yourself or just to see how it was built. Thank you so much for visiting here in the leg room. Next week's video has actually been on the wall behind me for the last 2 weeks. So if you can guess what that is, congratulations. I'll be interested to see if anybody can. Patrons are banned. Patrons are banned from guessing because I did a live stream building what next week's video is. So none of that, patrons, all right? Don't give it away. Let everybody have a guess at it. And we will catch you next time in the leg room. And until then, play well. Bye.